I can't see!
Today I want to talk about the level design of a game that's pretty awesome, but first I'd like to get something off my chest. While a lot of great critiques on level design are floating around YouTube, I can't shake the feeling there's been a developing trend over the years that's kind of narrowed the average perception on the subject. A lot of the more prominent videos tend to just talk about how games teach a player to use a title's mechanics and such. Now, this stuff is important when it comes to a tutorial level or when introducing some sweet new mechanic, but really there is much more to good level design. A well-designed level should be effectively paced, offer various challenges to overcome, and necessitate some decision making on the part of the player. It's all well and good teaching plenty of stuff, but there comes a point where a game needs to leave the player to their own devices and be tested on what they've learned, meaning actually play the game. Which brings me to Pandora Tomorrow, a game from the formerly 6 Splinter Cell series, often lauded for its well-constructed level design. Like many other things, I enjoy my stealth games tight, when they put a player in lots of little difficult situations while still offering plenty of options. Basically anything that retains that Mission Impossible feeling of, how the hell do I get out of this one? There are plenty of great places to choose from, but I want to chat about the second level, the Cryogenics Lab in Paris. Personally, I really like this level because it's always felt like it's where the game takes off the training wheels and goes to town. There's a lot to this level, so I thought I'd just talk about the things that stood out to me, so let's cut to the chase and get started.
Welcome to Paris. You'll have time for sightseeing later.
At the very start, right before the first encounter, Ubisoft continue the Splinter Cell tradition of forewarning the player with the use of noise. This kind of shock will force most players back and make them actually consider their approach rather than just rushing in. What this does is encourage the player to stick by the wall on the left where an object is deliberately placed, which may have been missed had they just run on through. From here we can also see two main lights. One the player can see head on and the other just round the corner that not only works to highlight the guard and the ladder, but will reveal the player's position if they don't take care of it. The most obvious course of action is to take out both lights and run through, but if you want to be a little more stealthy, you could use that object to distract the guard while you make a dash for the train carriage or just shadow his patrol. So like you're having a meal at a fancy restaurant, Ubisoft serves up a little palate cleanser before the next section of the level. There's no real challenge to this, you're told to do a thing and you do it. It won't be something that really sticks with you after the level is over, but just giving the player something to do with their hands in between tense scenarios does wonders for keeping the pace of a level going. You don't want to be sitting around doing nothing, but at the same time a non-stop barrage of tests can make anyone tired. Basic stuff, but it works a lot better at pacing a level than any kind of forced walking section. The next little challenge is pretty sweet. It looks like it will be more simple than the last challenge, but it's actually got a bit more going on. The guy in this room is periodically checking each of the rows between these filing cabinets, and you may be drawn to the dark space above this one right here. Tricky thing is, the other cabinets are slightly higher than this one, so you can't just hop across all of them and get to the door. Instead, you have to keep an eye out for the gaps in between each cabinet to squeeze through. If you feel like shooting out the lights to use the path, then depending on his position, the guard will likely start to walk straight down rather than check each little alcove. Thing is, the walkway is pretty narrow and won't fit two people trying to sneak past each other, so those of you with the right amount of brain cells will try and find a way out. Fortunately, this cabinet to the side allows you to make a quick escape without ever having to take the guy out. This situation highlights how the structure of this room is great at creating inherent obstacles and escape routes. Now this one here is pretty cool. You're actually given some time to act and think here before any enemies show up. Other thing about this room though is how it naturally divides itself into 3 sections. The one in the middle is brightly lit by like a million lights, so that leaves 2 main routes for you to take. The one on the left divided by the chest-high barrier, and the one on the right in the dark but obstructed by a couple cabinets. If your natural Splinter Cell instincts kick in and you head over to the dark corner, then you'll find yourself at a pretty well-established point to take out these guys when they enter the room. Some of you might notice that the little doorway acts as a bottleneck for the guards when they come in. Super sick players can take them out with a well-placed gas grenade, but seeing as the first guy comes in before the other 2, you need to time it right. It's tricky, but trust me, I did it once. Take the route on the left after popping a few lights and you'll find yourself given a plethora of items to throw. Obviously your objective for this room is just to get to the other side, but this guy here has a habit of checking in and out of that place. You want him out of the picture, but taking him out in a room with 2 other guys is kinda bait, so your best course of action is getting all of these folks as far from the door as you can. Chuck one of these items into the corner of the room and these idiots will check it out, giving you a prime opportunity to make your way through. Tricky thing about this, however, is that these guys are often quite far apart, so at certain times one might hear an investigator noise while the others don't hear anything. Mess it up because you got spaghetti fingers or just playing through it at the wrong time? Don't worry, there's more items for your sorry ass. Of course, if you know how long it takes for them to get in, you can actually run right over and avoid all this trouble, but be careful because you can mess this one up if you don't know what you're doing. Hopping on into the second half of the level, the game uses sound to make you shit your pants once more as a couple dickheads with guns start firing before you get into their line of sight. The image of these folks highlighted by the light establishes the threats you'll face in this room, and you can clearly see where two of them walk off to. Now, the one thing I don't like about this level actually stems from the very thing I was just praising. Just hold on, it will make sense in a bit. See, the way this scenario is set up brings attention to this room filled to the brim with cameras, but if you're feeling paranoid, you might want to follow these two and find that they're cotching in the security room. You take care of them, which isn't that bloody easy by the way, consider it a job done, and run through that previous room only to find out there's someone still out there watching the security footage. This situation is bollocks because the game deliberately leads you to this place only for the hassle of dealing with these goobers to have no payoff. The one thing I do like about the scenario is how looking through the window first will give you a much easier way to the computer, so it's not all bad. Alright, check this room here because it's pretty awesome. I guess what I like about it is how simple yet effective it is. Your basic goal is to get the code from the computer this guy is on to open the door to the next area. The glass wall in front of this guy prevents you from just sending a sticky shocker his way, so you need to be a bit more tactical about your approach. If you're a cool kid like me, you're naturally going to scoot on over here, which makes for one of my favourite moments in the level. Scared the crap out of me the first time I played it. Great thing about this is that, like the train at the beginning, the use of noise induces some genuine panic in the player by cutting into the silence so well. These little scripted sequences actually add to the enjoyment of the level without taking away control like some other games might do. The other reason this is great is because it's not just a gimmick to spice up the room, but it influences how you play. The phone going off draws this guard away from his position into the corner of the room and so towards the player, which forces you to get out of the way. This often happens right as the other one is due to walk straight past. What ensues next is a scenario where you realise that your main objective is now out in the open and both your obstacles are stood together by the telephone. The coolest part about this setup is how perfectly it groups the two enemies together because it makes for a perfect use of a smoke grenade or some gas from a diversion camera.
What are you supposed to be?
The last section of the level I want to talk about is this. Following a cutscene, you have a decent amount of time to escape the vent you crawled through previously so you can avoid getting blown up. If you're the kind of person who eats dry toast for dinner, you can cotch here and wait for that timer to tick on down. On the other hand, if your brain is made of anything but mashed potatoes, you should see that this scenario here mirrors that seemingly pointless pace breaker near the beginning of the level. Shoot the tap and you avoid killing the goober locked in the room by himself, skip the timer, and get the satisfaction of being the most operated guy around. And there we go, not the hardest or the most varied level in the series, but one that does its job of introducing players to the dark, tightly knit corridors Splinter Cell is known for. Great examples this level provides are using sound to influence how the player acts and dropping in pace breakers so your level doesn't just end up as a straight up assault on the senses. Rounding it all out with a callback isn't entirely necessary, but you can use it to test the player on something specific to that level or just put it there to be cute. But the most important lesson is that space isn't everything. Not every room in this crib gives you 2 square miles of terrain. With even little space, as long as you throw in the right obstacles and escape routes, you can still form a varied experience depending on what you notice upon each playthrough. I get that people dropped out of school and want games to teach them stuff, but I hope this video clarified some other facets of good level design. I mean no disrespect to the guys out there making those analyses because there's some great shit out there, but as I've said, there's more to a good level than what it might tutor you on. So next time you play a level and feel like it just kinda clicks, take a step back and think about the scenarios it provides and why they're interesting.